Bill and Joel on North Georgia's News Talk, AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Boy, traffic troopers working overtime this morning. 7:45 at WDUN. Mickey just reported an accident, a rear ender at Pryor and Jesse Jewell, major thoroughfare coming into town this morning in the city of Gainesville. So be aware of that as you make your way in through the medical community.
Something else we need to be aware of, and that is the gang activity that goes on in our community. And a lot of times we don't want to acknowledge this, but we need to do more than acknowledge it. We need to learn how to stop it. Now, according to FBI statistics, in the 2011 National Gang Threat Assessment Guide, there's been a 40% increase of the national gang crisis in the United States.
To help us, we had 100 ways to stop gangs from taking away our communities, and we have ex-policeman Bobby Kipper and founder of the National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence. Bobby joins us now from Newport News, Virginia. Bobby, nice to have you on the Bill and Joel Morning Show.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Is any community immune from gang violence?
Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, the statistic that you just gave about the FBI report showed that the largest growth that they saw was actually in suburban and rural communities. So it's not, as most people would think, in our larger cities.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what we can do to stem this tide, because quite honestly, as we've heard about this story over the years, it seems like we're totally helpless to do anything.
Well, part of the reason is because we've always handled this in a real traditional manner. This has always been a police problem in communities across America, but part of the problem, as you said earlier when you announced, is that communities have been in denial. They're thinking, well, this is just a pocket of group of uncontrolled, young people that are creating an issue. But it really has gotten into almost a silent insurgency and across America as gangs have become more organized and taken over drug markets. And again, part of the reason why we haven't been able to stem the tide is because we've just turned this over as a police matter. This is much more than a police matter. It's actually a community matter.
So in your top 100 ways to do this, how do we change the heart and mind of a community to acknowledge this, then to change the heart and mind of gang or potential gang members?
Well, we have actually 100 ways that have been outlined in the book No Colors. But first of all, we feel like you have to bring the community together. Sometimes communities really want to talk about gangs, and after you identify gangs at a very early age, and by the way, it's very important to understand that some of these gang members are being recruited as early as 9 and 10 years old in various parts of America. When you identify that these young people are at risk, we need to actually have community services to wrap their arms around these young people. It's too late if you just wait till they commit some type of serious crime. In 100 ways to stop gangs from taking away your community, one of the things that we really propose is that you get more community partners together to include your faith-based community, your business community, civic leaders, your educators. Everyone needs to come around the same table. And it's just not one program that's going to fix this problem because every community is different. But what we advocate is that each community come up with its own strategy and what we call a strategic plan of action to start with prevention all the way through to when even people come out of incarceration and go back to their communities. Many of them go right back to the gangs. And we're saying, look, we need to have a life plan for these people to pick up their life and move on.
7:48 at WDO, and we're talking with Bobby Kipper, of course, a co-author of the book No Colors: 100 Ways to Stop Gangs from Taking Away Our Communities. Bobby, I do hear what you're saying, that we need to recognize that we have this problem in our community. But I guess, if you've never had it before, how do you recognize some of those early warning signs?
Well, first of all, the early warning signs are pretty clear. It's really interesting when we talk to educators. They tell us that they can actually, they spend about 90% of their day within their school houses dealing with about 10% of the population of the schools. And we can tell, they even say at a very primary age, the kids that are not on target to read, kids that are really falling off the bandwagon and showing tremendous risk factors. We can identify those kids early, and that's the issue of the community. The issue of the community is not to wait till that involves a law enforcement interaction, which becomes, a mark on a young person for the rest of their life. We need to identify kids who are at risk, and communities have this information. They know these children. They know who is at risk early of failure and early of being out of the system and not being productive. So that is early intervention, and we need to step it up. We can't wait for the police.
Final note, Bobby, talk about some of the success that your 100 Ways have brought to the forefront.
Well, we have actually studied San Jose. We've studied, a number of things. Minneapolis, Minnesota. There are great things happening around the country, and that's why we feel that 100 Ways is very, very important. It's every community faces this, and we're talking about small, medium communities and large communities. I directed a program in Richmond, Virginia, that saw a drastic reduction in the crime rate there and the gang involvement in that city. And really one of the biggest players in that was the faith-based community. They came out and they actually were doing tutoring on the streets. We had former gang members. We even were removing tattoos from gang members who are now gainfully employed in very, very prominent businesses in the Richmond area. So the community came together with a strategy, not a program, but a strategy to put into place and really saved a lot of young people from going the wrong direction.
Well, we love to leave it on a high note like that, Bobby. That's great. Where do we pick up 100 Ways No Color, or rather, No Colors?
It is available now online and also at your local bookstores, Amazon, as well as BarnesandNoble.com, and your local bookstores will show you how to get a copy of No Colors.
Boy, this is interesting for all of us, and we have some of those things going on in our community, but our leaders and all the aspects you talked about could use this, I'm sure, and we want to say thank you for what you're doing to help communities across the country.
Well, thank you so much for having me this morning.
It's been a pleasure, and it's been enlightening.